Thank you, Tanya. Beautifully done. I now have the privilege of conferring Eastman's Distinguished Alumni Award and introducing today's commencement speaker. At Eastman, I sometimes fear that we allow ourselves to succumb to the temptation of highlighting only the successes of our most accomplished musicians. When speaking of our distinguished alumni, we generally point to the internationally renowned soprano, the amazing jazz composer, the hot composer of scores for films and television, and the CEO of a major symphony. For reasons that are understandable, we highlight those individuals who remain most successful and most effective in the music industry. Yet so many of our alumni have gone on to chart very different courses and amazing careers outside of music, all while keeping music as an important part of their lives. We can count among our alumni very accomplished doctors, lawyers, scientists, computer scientists, and business people in all realms of business. The fact that they have chosen careers outside of music does not for a moment diminish the value of their Eastman degree or the important skills and life lessons they learned as students in our school. And today's guest speaker is a man of infinite talents and a person who has most definitely charted his own course. After completing 3 degrees at Eastman and teaching in public and community music schools, he returned to Eastman in the administrative role as Dean of Students. After a few years, because he was so eminently capable and qualified, he eventually left Eastman and moved into the University of Rochester, where he eventually rose to the position of Vice President and General Secretary and Senior Advisor to the President. His tenure at this university, which is now 50 years since he first enrolled at Eastman, is not measured in terms of years. It is measured in the thousands of lives this man has impacted. Truly, Paul Burgett is loved and cherished by many generations of students, faculty, and administrators. I will tell you, as a doctoral student, I had limited contact with Dean Burgett, but I remember my first contact as though it were yesterday, and I have never forgotten it. I was a student here for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I was coming in the main doors of Eastman, the vestibule in which we all do the door-holding dance with our instruments, and Paul Burgett is exiting, and he said 3 words to me that I have never forgotten. In this deep, sonorous bass voice, he says, "Good morning, Jamel." I had never met this man. I had no idea who this man was. But here is a person who took the time to learn the names of incoming students for these encounters where he will not only just greet them, but know something about them. And that has resonated in my life now for more than 30 years, and I have never forgotten it. As I try to remind myself to listen carefully when somebody's introduced, try to actually know someone. It was because of 3 words from a complete stranger 32 years ago. So I would like to invite Paul Burgett here and let me award him formally our Distinguished Alumni Award for Achievement. Paul Burgett. Allow me to read the citation. Established in 1972 as the Alumni Achievement Award, the Distinguished Alumni Award now recognizes alumni whose exceptional professional achievements, contributions to their chosen field, and service to the Eastman School of Music have brought honor to themselves and to the University of Rochester. This award is presented to Paul J. Burgett. Since arriving as a young violinist at the Eastman School of Music more than 50 years ago, Paul Burgett has become a part of the fabric of our school and of the University of Rochester. Adored by students, faculty, and alumni, Paul has the uncanny ability to connect with people on all levels and from all walks of life. His tireless advocacy for justice and equity is born out of personal challenges he faced and overcome in his own life. As our former Dean of Students, he guided young musicians on their academic career and life paths. Both inside and outside the classroom, he models how to be an exemplary teacher and person simply through the example he sets. The skills he learned and the values he honed as a student at Eastman prepared him for a remarkable career as a leader at the university. His enthusiasm and love, not only for the Eastman School of Music, but for the entire university and its students, has made him a trusted advisor to the president and an indispensable member of the president's cabinet. The energy he exhibits and the personal interest he takes in others is beyond compare, and his skills as a listener and his genuine compassion have made him a role model for all. We are proud to call Paul Burgett an alumnus of the Eastman School of Music and ever grateful to call him our friend. Welcome home, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Dean Rossi, President Seligman, Provost Lenny, friends, graduates, alums, this honor is probably the greatest I've ever received. 50 years ago, I came, this regional treasure from St. Louis, Missouri, with aspirations of greatness and visions of violinistic sugar plums dancing in my head, just like all of yours. You remember, my God, was it just 4 years ago in room 120? You remember the fiery furnace talk, don't you? In which I said that the next 4 years would fly by. I said to you at that time that the fiery furnace was so hot that there were times after Dean Rossi or Professor Locke invited you in and then slammed the door shut. When things didn't get better, you were afraid you were going to die. And then when they really didn't get better, you were afraid you weren't going to die. But the fact of the matter is, not only did you not die, but by witness of today, that fiery furnace door swung open by your hand, and you stepped out, tempered like steel, better in every respect than you went in. Your perspective shaped and reshaped, consistent with the realization that, like Copernicus told us, the world does not revolve around you, you revolve around it. You also have discovered something about where your passions are, and what you are good at, and what direction, to borrow the metaphor from Dean Rossi, you need to tack to the right or tack to the left. We'll get back to that. But for the moment, knowing you from 4 years ago and knowing that this is a moment of triumph, of achievement and accomplishment, I'm going to ask you as I begin to join me in 3 cheers. And I want you to take the roof off this place. And so I say, hip hip! Yeah. Hip hip! Fortissimo. Fortissimo. Molto fortissimo. Hip hip! Know who this is. It's the Eastman Philharmonia in their November 4th of last year performance of the Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony. It's all about the music. At the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, at the end of our lives, we Eastman people, it's all about the music. Yeah, I know, getting a job, going to graduate school, getting the gig, it's important, to be sure, and those things will happen. You'll see. I wasn't the sharpest pencil in the box, and yet 50 years has elapsed. You just arrived yesterday, and 4 or 5 or 6 years have elapsed. But I begin my remarks by asserting that first and last in the lives of those who have been here at Eastman, it's the music that informs our aesthetic, our artistic, our emotional lives now and forevermore, and that a permanent theme never will be not a part of our lives. Music, sweet music. There was that moment long ago in your life. You remember that moment of epiphany when the musical stars aligned, when the synapses in your brain sparked and your ears heard the siren song. Why, I remember my own. This 16-year-old high school violinist playing in the second violin section of the St. Louis Philharmonic, and my first symphony was the Tchaikovsky Fourth. And you know, violinists, it's a tough piece. That fourth movement requires one's fingers to fly and the bow to flash. And I remember sitting on the stage of Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, Missouri, playing away. And because I had worked so hard, the notes disappeared. I ended atop Mount Olympus and thought to myself, OMG. Even before those letters were known. This was 1962. And I knew that I had to do music. There was nothing else that I could imagine. I had to do music. And I did it well. And so I applied to the Eastman School, and I'll always remember when the letter offering me admission to the Eastman School arrived, and I leapt for joy and made my way here. And those of you who heard the fiery furnace speech 4 years ago will recall my story. Within days after the sophomores, juniors, seniors, faculty, and, graduate students, and faculty arrived, my whole notion of talent got redefined, and I began to wait for the second letter from the admissions office, the one in the thin envelope, telling me that a terrible mistake had been made, that the Paul Burgett they really intended to admit could play the violin, and asking if I might pack my bags and leave under the cover of darkness to spare us all the embarrassment. Well, it's been 50 years, and I figure the statute of limitations has expired. But I know that the early experience, that musical theme that would evolve through many variations, through the tacking of my sailing vessel over 50 years, was not unique to me. So I decided to ask some of my Eastman alumni friends who are widely diverse by age, gender, diversity, ethnicity, whose careers have taken greatly, greatly different paths, to tell you their aha moment, their, if you will, Meliora moment. That moment that drove them to the Eastman School. That moment that continues to drive them. That moment in which their DNA became infused by music. I've told you mine, and now I want them to tell you theirs in just a few short clips. I called them up. I said, I want you to tell our class of 2015 your story. So I got on the phone and I called him up. The first person I called was Ron Carter. Ron Carter, class of 59. He's a double bassist, among the most original, prolific, and influential jazz bassists in the world. Philadelphia Inquirer says he's arguably the greatest bass player jazz has ever known. Over 2,000 albums with the greatest jazz artists in the world, including Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, Bill Evans, Chick Corea, Quincy Jones, Freddie Hubbard, the late B.B. King, God rest his beloved blues soul, and on and on. Ron is a double Grammy Award winner, including an honorary and multiple honorary degrees, including an honorary doctorate from the University of Rochester a few years ago. I talked to him on the phone, and so the quality, the fidelity of the recording is not so great, so tune your ears to listen to what he has to say. But he started out by telling me something I didn't know. He started on the cello.
Hey, this is Ron Carter, and yes, I'm a graduate of the 1959 Eastman School. I went to my diploma to make sure it was correct, and it was written in ink, so that's true. Welcome to you and greetings to the class of 2015. My aha moment happened when I was 11 years old. I'm from a large family, and at the time it was 1959. You can imagine the neighborhoods were pretty separated. This white lady walks in with these instruments in her arms, a violin, a viola, and a cello. She tells us that this class that we're looking at, youth class, these kids I'm looking at, with me are going to start an orchestra in this school. Now, there's about 20 kids in this class. Well, we're no more than 11. She says, I want you all to walk by this table, and if you want to touch the instruments, you can't blow them, but just touch them, see if they kind of got the sound that you want to be fooling around with, as she called it. For a while, they make this orchestra sound good. So at the end of the table is this cello that's laying on its side that looks bigger than me, of course, at 11 years old. They all look kind of huge. So I picked it up. I could tell it wasn't in tune because the strings had different tension. I knew that much about music. My dad made a banjo a couple of times. So I told her I'd like to try this, what do you call this? The cello, Ron. Yes, I'd like to try this cello. Okay, she says, okay, well, you can take it with the understanding that you take some lessons. You don't play this thing on your own. You need some help. I told my parents, and they agreed that that's what I want to do. I have to practice every day. I have to practice seriously. And the lessons came about, I have to be prepared for the lessons. Those were my aha moments. One of the reasons I'm sharing this moment with you, or two moments actually, is that we all have them, including you, this graduating class of 2015. I think it's important for you to remember these special moments, so not only can you cherish them, but share them. Thanks, and this is Ron Carter, class of 59, written in ink, my diploma to the class of 2015. Have a good day. I'll see you in the nightclub pretty soon.
Thank you, Ron. "78 years old, and it was tough to catch up with him, I'll tell you. He's still playing. So after talking to Ron, I said, who's next? Who did I go to school with? Well, Bob Ludwig popped into my name because he was all over the papers having just won a Grammy Award. So I called Bob. Graduated in the class of 66. He's among the most prolific, successful, and in-demand mastering engineers in the recording industry. His mastering credits include having recorded musical artists including Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Kronos String Quartet, Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney, Guns N' Roses, Madonna, David Bowie, Bruce Springsteen. I stopped counting after a while, but you get the message. 10 Grammy Awards Bob Ludwig has won, and 3 Latin Grammys, and more. An endless list of other major audio engineering awards than I could even count. Let's hear what Bob had to say.
I started trumpet when I was in 5th grade, and my biggest musical moment was when I first got to the band and heard the band for the first time. I know as ratty as an elementary school band sounds, it was still like, wow. The whole thing about people playing together and trying to make things as perfect together in unison, that was an experience I'd never had before in my life, and it was something like, yes, I love this, I want to keep doing this and making it better and better and better. When I was in high school, I was also doing a lot of recording. In fact, when I was going to graduate, I couldn't decide if I wanted to go into engineering or into music, and my high school music teacher, thank goodness, talked me into going to Eastman. And I was very into music education, so I applied as a music education major. It was so great because I prepared the Haydn Trumpet Concerto and the Hummel Trumpet Concerto and some Arbon excerpts or, a bunch of things for the audition that they wanted to hear. And music has served me my entire life. I've certainly been able to make a great career out of it. It's been fantastic enjoyment for me every day. The most wonderful thing is that there's so much music to be uncovered that you don't know about. I happen to be into contemporary classical music, and then when I got into Stockhausen and John Cage and Morton Feldman, the music of those people, changed my life. And I've, attended concerts of the Morton Feldman Second String Quartet in New York, and it's a 6-hour-long piece, and time flew by and put me into a space that you can't imagine what it's like unless you sit there and let that music wash over you. Well, congratulations, everyone. You're about to embark into the world of music, and what a great, great world that is.
And the thing you must do after this ceremony is over is run right out to Amazon or iTunes and order up the Morton Feldman Second String Quartet. Thank you, Bob. I was Colleen Conway's Dean of Students. She was here and graduated in the class of '88. She was also the president of the Student Association, and so I worked very closely with her. She was a horn player. And let's hear what Colleen now is she's professor of music education at the School of Music at the University of Michigan, one of our favorite competitors. And so she's a very active scholar in the field of music education, having produced over 80 publications in peer-reviewed journals that deal with specializations in instrumental music education, pre-service music teacher education, qualitative research, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things I wanted to point out to you is that I always believe that giving back means replacing yourself. And so I'm happy to tell you that many of you will know that she gave back to the Eastman School of Music by sending one of her doctoral students to our faculty, namely Professor Anne Marie Stanley. Let's listen to Connie.
I would say I had that first kind of moment of chills running down my spine as a junior in high school as a horn player in the Springfield Symphony Youth Orchestra, and we were playing the Forêt Provence. And what's interesting to me is I wasn't actually even playing the horn. It was during the flute solo, and there was just that moment where you get chills down your spine and you say, I want more of that. For me, the creation of a life that would allow more of that kind of experience led me to Eastman, and then led me to begin my career teaching elementary band. And really the focus of my musicianship changed from horn playing, which I still enjoy, to moments of pride in seeing students have their own musical experiences. And for me, seeing students have that kind of chills down their spine was actually as powerful as kind of having it happen to me myself. Recently, my work has led me more to studying and writing about music learning and teaching others how to do the same. And although that's a very different interaction than playing the horn or teaching fifth graders in beginning band, it's definitely no less exciting. So I feel like I've learned that there's many different roads to that musical centerpiece, and if you keep music as the centerpiece, it'll be an amazing journey. I wish the class of 2015 the best of luck and have a wonderful career.
Thank you, Colleen. And thank you for sending us Anne Marie Stanley. Well, I've got a couple more that I've got to tell you. Unfortunately, it was not by phone. They were here, so I was able to take them downstairs. And the next is Jeff Beal. I was his Dean of Students as well, class of '85. One of the most prolific and respected composers for film, television, and the concert hall. And as you know, he was in residence here last month with his spouse, Joan, who also is an Eastman alum, a soprano, and also an Eastman grad. To Jeff's credits are HBO's Carnival in Rome, the TV series Monk, Netflix drama The House of Cards, documentaries Blackfish, The Queen of Versailles, and commissions from major symphony orchestras around the world. Jeff is the winner of 3 Emmy Awards, and he has been nominated for 13 Emmys. Let's listen to Jeff.
I remember very, very clearly when I was in high school as a trumpet player. I was playing in a wonderful youth symphony, the Oakland Youth Symphony, and we were playing Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. And I had already started composing. I think I was about 16 years old. And I'd written a lot of jazz big band stuff, but I always I knew I wanted to write for orchestra. And we were sitting in the trumpet section, there's a lot of waiting around to play your part. And so we started with that bassoon solo and went into that first 10 minutes of the piece. We did it several times because it's so difficult. And my whole experience was just I just felt like I was experiencing the brilliance of this man, and the sounds that were coming out of the orchestra were just blowing my mind. And it was at that moment I knew that I had to be a composer, and also I wanted to write for orchestra. I just realized what an incredible venue and gift it would be to create music like this and to be able to paint with sound in some way. Joan and I we just last night in our home in Los Angeles hosted a little concert of string quartet music, me and 4 other composers, and we had about 80 folks in a room. And it was so special because they were phenomenal world-class musicians, but there was just this sense like we were all just being fed, we were being given this amazing gift together. Well, I'd say to the undergraduate and graduate students of 2015, congratulations on surviving one of the toughest and most demanding experiences of your lives, and know that by making it to this day, that you are so well prepared, and we are looking to you to bring us into the future and to keep this torch burning.
Thank you, Jeff. Notice what he and others have said. It is you who are going to take us into the future. We're not going to tell you what the future is. It's you who will tell us. My final interview, I thought, I've gone to these wonderful friends of ours, some of whom you know, some of whom you may not know, but I thought, let me go to one who all of you know. And so I talked to Alicia Ault, class of 2015, a singer, a peer, your classmate, who with her sisters, Amanda and Alana, have taken Canada by storm, and their first album, Timeless, has received rave reviews and lots of airplay both in Canada and the United States. Let's listen to Alicia's very moving comments.
I wanted to offer you all my musical moment, what made me really realize that music was something that I wanted to do and why I loved it, I have come to love it. When I was 15, my moment occurred during a performance of Green Sneakers by Ricky Ian Gordon, which is a piece for baritone, string quartet, and an empty chair. And I remember going to see this, and I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about Green Sneakers, and I thought it was a weird name, and I had no idea what it was about. I didn't realize that was the night that would really change everything for me. It was a setting of poems that he had written after his partner had died of AIDS. And I remember sitting in the audience, and I had tears streaming down my face. And Mr. Gordon was sitting just a few rows ahead to the right, and I could see just the look on his face, the sheer vulnerability and honesty in his writing really moved me. And it took us from a huge range of emotions, from utter joy to grief, vulnerability, and always love. Love was always the undercurrent of his writing. And in that moment, music changed from being just a hobby to something that I knew I had to do, because I wanted to use my voice to communicate and to say something important that could really impact people.
To use our voices, as Alicia says, to communicate, to say something important that could impact people. Alicia, please stand and accept our applause. And just as Ron Carter and Bob Ludwig and Colleen Conway and Jeff Beal and our Alicia Ault and I have told you of using our voices in a variety of ways, so must you, so must all of us who call ourselves musicians use our voices to say something to impact people. Finally, my mantra has long been that passion and ability drive ambition. Passion and ability drive ambition. Let me hear you. I don't believe you. Once more. Oh, bravo. And you've heard it from others here today. Our lives will be lives, as Dean Rossi has told you, about tacking from left to right. I was here the other day and I had a wonderful conversation with Spencer Reese, and we came up with this wonderful idea, he and I, that really what it's about theme and variations. Our lives, as I think back over the last 50 years, it's been, right, Spencer? It's been theme and variations. The theme, as Colleen Conway has told us, is the DNA in our very bosom is that of music. And how we break the alphabet after our names, and however many titles we put in front of our names, it comes down to music. It's as simple as that. It comes down to music. But it's important to know that passion and ability drive ambition. All of our Eastman alums who've spoken to you today have careers that have taken them into widely varying, differing domains and worlds. But as Colleen Conway observed, music remains the centerpiece of our professional lives. And now I'm going to leave you with 3 ideas. Seems like 3 is a good term. We've heard it several times this afternoon. I'm going to give you 3 principles. And begin by saying that careers evolve, and you're limited principally by these 3 factors. The first, your capacity to invent, to dream the thing up. Don't let anyone take away from you the idea that you can be inventive and imaginative. Don't let anyone slip you into a box. Don't let them put you into a box, but rather keep open your options. Expand the limits of your horizons, musical horizons. You would be amazed that lens that you have ground for yourselves as musicians is much, much broader than we tend to realize. Why? I remember when I graduated from the Eastman School in 1968, the Vietnam War was raging, a very unpopular war, and guys like us at Eastman were looking for ways to keep from getting drafted because we had a military draft. So what most guys were doing was they were getting into military bands, so the Annapolis Band, the West Point Band. All of these bands were populated, the Marine Corps Band, were populated by Eastman and other great schools of music. Well, I was this close to getting drafted when I discovered that there was an Army band in Rochester, New York. I wanted to get a PhD. There was an Army band in Rochester, New York, so I went to the band headquarters. Who was there? None other than Jerry Nywood. Jerry Nywood, great alto saxophonist, some of you may remember, and Jerry Nywood was in the band. I went up to him and I said, Jer, you got to get me in this band. I'm about to get drafted. He looked at me and he said, Paul, you're a violinist. I said, it's true, but I played flute in high school. He said, oh, I didn't know that. He said, I'll see what I can do. I don't know what lies he told, or arms he twisted, or bribes he paid. But the next thing I knew, I was in the 98th Division Army Reserve Band. Sent off to Fort Dix, New Jersey, the end of the world, I assure you, to do basic training. After which, I left Fort Dix, New Jersey, to go to the First Army Band in Fort Meade, Maryland, where Steve Gadd was the drummer with that band, so that was cool, and to get my flute chops back. And then I reported for duty back in Rochester. I'll never forget going to the band headquarters, reporting for duty. The commanding officer looked at me. I'd never met this man before, and he said, Burgett, I don't need another flute player. He said, I need a tuba player. You talk about yin yang. I said to him, sir, I don't play the tuba. He said, excuse me. He said, aren't you a graduate of Eastman School of Music? I said, yes, sir. He said, there's the tuba. And then it hit me. He didn't tell me he needed an F-16 fighter pilot. He needed a tuba player, and he didn't even need the tuba player from the New York Philharmonic. He needed a mediocre tuba player, and I thought to myself, brass methods, don't fail me now. And anyway, I only needed 2 notes. Omp and pa. You watch me do that. And by the way, I knew I'd gotten pretty good because when we did the whole suite in E flat major, you know how that opens up with in the tuba, and I did it. Your capacity to invent, number 1. 2, your willingness to work. But you already know that. You got to get the notes. You got to do the problem sets. You have to be able to do that. My first composition lesson when I was a student here at Eastman was with Samuel Adler. And Mr. Adler said to me in the main hall in Lowry Hall before our first lesson, he said to me, Paul, I want you to bring me a piece for horn and violin. Well, I went over to the practice rooms and I agonized over horn and violin. What kind of combination is that? That sounds really, really weird. And I went into my first lesson with him. I didn't have a piece for horn and fiddle. He looked at me and said, where's the piece? I said, well, Mr. Adler, you should understand that I blah, 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 blah. He said, that's not what I asked you to bring me. I didn't ask you to bring me blah, blah, blah. I asked you to bring me a piece for horn and fiddle. So why don't you go do that and then come back when you've got it? And I did. Wasn't the best piece, but I came back with a piece. I said to him later, Mr. Adler, why did you assign me that? He said, you're a violinist, aren't you? I said, I am. He said, well, it happens that the person who follows your lesson is a horn player. And I thought, interesting combination. Your willingness to work is impossible. Aaron Copland, when asked about inspiration, when asked about how he came to his great musical ideas, said, musical ideas. He says, I get up in the morning like everybody else, put my pants on one leg at a time like everybody else, have my breakfast, I go into my studio and I do my work. Your willingness to work, that's number 2. Number 3 is a little luck. Luck is luck, not luck like winning the lottery. Luck is being in the right place at the right time and knowing it. We're in the right place a lot of the time, and we don't know it. I was dean of students here and loving my work. I'd been a student for 10 years. I was dean of students for 7.5 years, loving my work, except for one problem. As much as I loved it, I needed a new piece. I needed a new piece to play. We all need new pieces to play. And the president of the university, at that time, President Dennis O'Brien, our 8th president, plucked me from my musical soil and asked me to reorchestrate my tune for a larger ensemble as a university vice president. The job didn't exist. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, and there was no office. And I also knew better than to say to him, Mr. President, what do you want me to do? I thought, I'll figure it out, and I'll figure it out because I simply adore students. Fourth movement of the Tchaikovsky Fourth. Eastman Philharmonia, November 4th, 2014. The lens that you have ground through which you view the world is a musical lens. You've all been to musical Mount Olympus and seen beauty at its best. You've worked so hard in these 4 or 5 or 6 years to make the notes disappear, and you've experienced music. I'll not try to tell you what the future in music, the arts, and education holds. You will, in time, as Jeff Beal told us earlier, tell me and the rest of the world, because you will create that future. You are on your way as leaders of the nation and of the world. Your alma mater, the Eastman School of Music, the University of Rochester, and all of us here are so terribly proud of you. And now, graduates, you will have the last word. I will ask you all to rise. And listen as our prima donna Alicia Alt leads our final salute.
Classmates, class of 2015, let's hold on to that and never forget that. So remember how Dean Burgett did a huge hip hip hooray at the beginning? We're gonna do that one more time, and this time, really, go to town, raise the roof. Here we go. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip!
production of the University of Rochester. Please visit us online and subscribe to our channel for more videos.